There's something I still hold in. I'm too ashamed to show it, but I feel like I'm never enough, and I fear I'll mess everything up. I'm haunted by the notion that all our doors are closing. Do you lie awake thinking of us, or were we made just to crumble to dust? My heart beats heaven, but you leave me questioning it, falling out on the floor. Oh, oh, oh. Self-doubt's relentless, leaving me defenseless, so my demons take control. What if I told you all of my flaws that I can't?
Big episode 50, Fumble fans. This is Fumble Podcast, episode 50. We made it, y'all. 50 episodes in. Thank you for everyone who's been supporting my show, supporting Pej the Maniac on my social media, on my comedy channels. It's been an awesome ride, and we're just getting started. And you may have noticed the guest for episode 50 is none other than Michael Von Wagner. His new single, Insecure, is out on all platforms currently. Make sure you take a listen to that. It's killer, and I'll have that in the open of this episode. Obviously, you've heard it already. He's an artist and producer from Salt Lake City, Utah. And fun fact about him is he started as an intern for none other than Imagine Dragons, and we're going to talk about all that, which was in Las Vegas. He then moved back to Utah, and he's been producing music for 2 years, wrote songs for other artists, and now he's writing songs for himself. Michael, thank you for joining me, man.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate you.
100%, man. Is music in your blood, or you just discovered it, or how did that come about?
So I come from a pretty musical family. My parents both sing and play instruments, and all my siblings do. But I'm kind of the only one in my family who actually pursued music as a career and tried to take it and run with it.
No, and I love it. That's cool, man. I can relate. I'm a musician too. I started as a musician when I was a little kid, but it's a great job to have. It's a great field. Now, is that when did you get into specifically writing music?
Well, I mean, I've been writing forever. When I was in high school, I wrote a bunch of songs and made this album with my friend.
Yeah.
And it was not great. My songs back then were not nearly as good.
But that's a start, man. That's
yeah.
Like, a lot of people don't even get to that point. So good for you for writing.
Yeah, and then I would try to sell CDs in the hallway at school.
Listen, I know. Hey, how old are you?
I'm 27.
Okay, so yeah, I'm 36, but I 100% made a side hustle from selling CDs in high school. So I get it.
That's dope.
Yeah, man. Well, it's fun. That's fun. What about this Imagine Dragon deal? How did that fall into your lap?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of the band of Imagine Dragons is from Utah.
Oh.
Or have ties to Utah. They went to school in Utah and stuff.
I didn't know
and
that.
So when I was in college at Utah Valley University, one of my professors, she had a connection. She knew one of the managers, and they were looking for an intern. And so I decided I'd shoot my shot.
Hey, and it worked.
Yeah, by a miracle.
Nice. What was that experience for you? You were telling me off before we were live that it wasn't all the glam, but it was more paperwork.
Yeah. So when I say I interned for Imagine Dragons, people are like, "Oh, did you jam out with the band? Did you work with them in the studio?" It wasn't at all like that. I managed a lot of their back end stuff. So a lot of like tracing their royalties from internet radio stations and stuff like that.
Yeah. How was that?
And
Is
then,
that a lot of work to like trace all that stuff?
yeah, it's a ton of paperwork, and there's a lot of, you have to reach out to one person and then they don't know and they have to like reach out to their boss and etc. And you sometimes have to really hound people to get them to pay up. But
it's always easier to pay money than to get it back. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
cool,
but it was good. Yeah.
That's awesome. And you did that for 2 years?
I did that for about 6 months.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And it was a good experience. Me and my wife loved living in Las Vegas and we really miss it.
Yeah.
It's a lot colder in Utah, so we're missing the sunshine.
I get it, man. I actually drove a quick little tangent. I drove through Salt Lake and it's so beautiful. Like I didn't have time to stop and actually like take it all in, but I was driving across country. So I drove, I took the northern route from Maryland, which is where I used to live. And I took that route all the way through Salt Lake and eventually to California where I live now. But
that is a long road trip.
It was long, but it was cool. And it was just me. I just wanted to try it. And it was fun. Yeah. But Salt Lake, like I was just driving. It's just long roads upon long roads, and then all of a sudden everything's white.
Yeah,
and it was just like
mountains everywhere.
Mountains, and then the actual salt right on the road. Like I saw that, like the white salt. It was really pretty. I definitely want to go out there on a trip with my wife at some point. So.
Yeah, lots of outdoorsy stuff to do, especially if you love snowboarding and skiing.
Yeah. My wife loves that stuff. I'm horrible at all that because I always grew up playing basketball. I didn't do anything with ice, but I'll try it because I want to try everything at least once. But well, cool, man. I want to talk about this single of yours, "Insecure." It's fire, and the audience.
Thank you.
The audience will agree that we, as I put it on the intro here to this episode. What was the inspiration behind it? And you have a co-star on there, I feel.
Yeah, Rylan Hare.
Yeah, Rylan Hare. Yeah. How did you come up with it? What was the process for you on this?
So I'll kind of start with how I met my collaborator on it, Rylan.
Okay.
So I had been releasing music in my local scene for, I don't know, probably about a year. And randomly out of the blue one day, I just get this FaceTime call from an unknown number. And I was like, what the heck? I answered it, not knowing what to expect.
Yeah.
And it was Rylan, and he was like, hey man, this is so random, but I'm a fan of your music and I write music too. And he like sat down at a piano and played a song and it was so good. But I was very surprised. He's very like outgoing.
Yeah.
So it was unconventional, but I thought he was a great songwriter. And so I was like, hey man, why don't you come over to my studio and we'll write something? And Insecure was actually the very first thing that we wrote together. It just like clicked right off the bat.
Wow. And what was the inspiration behind the lyrics on that?
Yeah. So when we were talking about what to write about, we both kind of shared experiences where growing up, and it wasn't necessarily like our family or anything like that, but just society in general. Mm-hmm. Just growing up, boys weren't really supposed to talk about their feelings. Yeah. The culture was very much like boys don't cry, be a man, suck it up, etc. And so I had a hard time learning how to be vulnerable and open about my emotions. And so, especially as I grew up, and Rylan had the same experience, when I would get in relationships, I had a really hard time like opening up and making a connection with people because I would never talk about how I felt.
Yeah.
And eventually I met my wife, JC, and she helped chip away at my walls.
Yeah.
And eventually I learned that it's okay to be vulnerable. And not only is it okay, but it's so important that we're vulnerable with the people that we love. So
now, isn't that amazing how our significant others have that power? They can just like, they get you to just say everything and cry in front of them and do all the things you thought you weren't supposed to do. And it's
exactly.
Like, and it's cool though, because it's actually empowering, I think. And I've learned to follow the notion of that, like a real man will actually be okay to cry. Like they can show their emotions. Like I think it was a previous episode with another guest, and we talked about the toxicity that's out there regarding like the masculine toxicity, and like, oh yeah, everybody just tough, like, you know, don't be a wimp, this, that. I mean, starting from grade school on, right? It was like kind of embedded into our minds.
Yeah.
But the good thing is that, you know, people like yourself, and through music and through lifestyle, you know, we're sharing and showing that it's okay, and it's necessary, like you said, it's needed to be showing these vulnerabilities. And did you have any experiences growing up as a kid where you faced that dilemma, like where you wanted to maybe show some emotions, but you were pressured into holding that in, perhaps?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like specific instances. There definitely was a stigma, I guess, if I would ever like cry about something. People would always like tell me that I was being a wimp.
Yeah.
And you know what? I do think there is a difference between being open and vulnerable and just complaining about everything, right?
Yes. There's a fine line. There's a fine line.
Right. Right, exactly.
And what do you think? What do you think? So what happened in that scenario that you were talking about?
I just just to follow the culture, and like I wanted to be perceived as cool by all my friends, right? And so yeah, I just learned to like I got teased a lot growing up. I got bullied because I was kind of a chubby kid. And yeah, a lot of kids would make fun of me. And I guess my way of playing it off, I definitely found that if I like cried or something about it, that it would just make it worse.
Yeah.
People would just tease me more. So I learned to play it off in humor.
Yeah.
And I would start making fun of myself and almost like beat them to the punch, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, yeah, it took a long time to unlearn some of those habits and to learn to be like vulnerable and okay with some of my insecurities and being able to talk about them, especially with my significant other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, more power to you. I can empathize with you again because I've been there. For me, it was being a brown kid in America during 9/11, right? So that was my thing. So it was like, so I went through those challenges. Same thing as what you did. I became the goofball, and I became the guy who would joke with it. And there was a small clique within the school, like that we were all like tight. There were like 3 or 4 of us that like I wouldn't I wouldn't consider that they're them bullies, but it was obvious when you were being where I was being bullied versus where my friends were just playing with me, right? So it was
Yeah.
so with those guys that were like my friends, I would make fun of myself, right? Because the bullies
Hmm.
were around, but they were close enough that they could hear it. So then they're
Yeah.
like you said, to beat them to the punch. And I feel like it kind of gave me my future in those days, like as far as like comedy, because now that's what I do. But it's
Yeah.
and it's funny that that's how it worked out. Also with music too, because I like music for me was a source of therapy. As far
Yeah.
without an actual therapist, like it was like I would just not give a shit. Excuse my friend, I cuss on here, so I wouldn't
No, you're
care.
good.
All right, good. I wouldn't care like who's around when the music was on, right? Like my inspiration's always been Freddie Mercury and Queen. So like it was like when I saw him like command the stage, right? And then it was just something like some sort of fire was lit in me. And I
Yeah.
literally like could not care. And growing up in middle school and high school, like during like boy band era, where
Hmm.
when I grew up, like I was one of the few guys who was like into those musics too, right? Um, like as a straight male, I was into it, you know. So
Uh-huh.
it was cool. Like, but again,
Who are your
but
favorite groups?
like I grew up listening to a lot of like pop music, and as far as like Boys to Men, and then
Okay.
I loved Boys to Men. I love Boys to Men more now because
Yeah.
I'm like I educated myself in how what good they were, and it's crazy
Uh-huh.
how well they harmonize. In sync, like Backstreet Boys, like I grew up on all that, right? So
Yeah.
like they were all touring the world, and they were on top of the world like when I was like 15. So it was like it was it was awesome to me. And then like you know we would somehow get tapes of their concerts to learn their choreography, like me and my boys and stuff, and like we'd go to parties, and like the songs would come on, and then we we just break into the dance. It was
Uh-huh.
fun. It was fun, man. But it was like, but again, you know, there was always that polarizing opinion on liking those types of music in high school. So it was like
Yeah.
he was like, "No, man, that's a chick band. What are you doing listening to that?" And I was like, "But anyway, with music, I wasn't uh, for perfect term to use insecure about it. Right? I wasn't insecure with myself around music. Like I was just like, yeah, that's what I like. And when
That's really cool.
I mean, I don't know what it was. With other things, I was insecure, but not with music. And then comedy was just a good way to kind of put a mirage. So,
Yeah.
but what about you? Was there anything for you that growing up that maybe it was music, but when you would listen to it or write, maybe you felt free and you didn't feel judged and you didn't feel uh, you know, like you had to have your guards up per se.
Yeah. For me, that thing was also definitely music.
Yeah.
Um, I was a big fan of like the whole boy band era as well, like Backstreet Boys and Sync. But I was also very much into kind of like the emo punk rock
Me too. Yeah.
scene. Um, so like bands like Dashboard Confessional, All American Rejects, Blink 182, stuff like that.
I love it. Yeah.
Um, and so I learned how to play guitar when I was a young teenager. And I just started writing music, and I followed after these emo
Hey.
superstars, which the songwriting is all about like I just kind of venting your feelings.
Right. Right. And
And
hence the
so
word emo.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so that was therapy for me. And I feel like I'm generally a pretty happy person, and I always have been.
Yeah.
Um, but my music, I have so many sad songs and so
Mhm.
many like songs about mental health and stuff. Um, and I think that's because I've taken a lot of these negative feelings and I kind of bottled them up inside of a song. And then I'm able to process it that way.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really healthy coping mechanism.
That's great, man. And listen, I think out of the 50 episodes, I've talked about mental health. It feels like on 60 episodes worth, because it's just it's like, I mean, it's huge, man. And
Yeah.
the older I get, the more I see the value in it, and how important it is to take care of your chicken, as what's his
Yeah,
name?
exactly.
Marshawn Lynch, he would call
Yeah.
it that. But so it's but that was your voice, I think, right? That's how you were able to express yourself through your lyrics and through your music. And we have to find a way to voice because holding it in is the real danger. I think. And
absolutely.
If you bottle that stuff up, it can lead to some scary times.
Yeah.
And I know people that do that, unfortunately, and it's hard. It's hard seeing it, and not everyone can lean to writing or writing music, or even writing poetry, or just writing. And so it's not it doesn't come as easily to a lot of people. So myself, as a musician, I struggled. My biggest struggle was writing, actually, like writing the lyrics, or writing the musical part. I can write the music, because I always lean more towards the instruments, right? That's
right
in music. So the lyrics, I have to really like practice at it. But it's so that was a struggle for me. But they always say, right, you just got to do it, and eventually you start to find your own rhythm, find your own cadences, and so yeah, that's important. But guitar, you said you started with, that's now, as far as Insecure, we talked about, but other songs you wrote with Ryan or on your own that we can hear, or you can share here with us, that's coming up, maybe anything like that in the future or in the now?
Yeah, so I'm actually
I like
we
that
talked a little bit about
we have similar gaming chairs, by the way. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh yeah. Let's go.
Yeah. It's so comfortable too.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. My bad. Continue.
No, you're good. So we talked a little bit about kind of like the emo punk era. My past releases have been mostly pop with a little bit of electronic influence.
Mm-hmm.
And I am working on an EP right now where I still want it to have kind of that mainstream accessibility.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of diving in. I'm allowing myself to just write whatever I want to write and not worry about what anybody is like, how the reception is going to be. And I'm borrowing a lot more influence from kind of that emo punk era.
Yeah.
And just be as real as possible with the lyrics. I don't have like a drop date for that EP yet, but it should be 6 songs, and it'll be coming out sometime this spring.
Hey, that's coming up, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm just fleshing out the production right now.
That's exciting, man. I'm happy for you. And I didn't know Michael. He DM'd me about this song, and I genuinely enjoyed it. And I was like, you know what? I want to get this guy on my podcast, and luckily, he agreed. Now, where can people find you and the rest of your music? Is it all under Michael Von Wagner on Spotify, Apple Music, all that?
Yeah, it is. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, basically anywhere you go to stream. It's on there.
Easy. All right. So you guys know where to find him and his music. Where can people find you on social media?
So I'm the most active on TikTok and Instagram. Right. And my handle on both of those is at Michael V Songs.
That'll be down here.
Perfect. Yeah. And then I do have a Facebook page, but I don't really use it that much anymore.
Yeah. It's not even Facebook anymore. That's how much I have.
Oh, yeah. It's Meta now, I guess.
Yeah. Metaverse. I know. Can you believe we're going to have, apparently the rumors on that is we're eventually going to have like a twin in that universe. That's what was said to happen eventually.
Oh,
When
we're gonna
like
create a virtual version of ourselves.
Yeah. Zuckerberg was talking about it when he introduced the Meta. He was like, yeah, so the goals are that eventually it'll be like a duplicate scenario of everything you have here in virtual world. And then in the virtual world, now don't quote me on this, audience, but it was something like, and correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but he said apparently you can make money, like virtual money, essentially crypto in the metaverse, but somehow you can pull that over into the real world, and apparently it's like you can have like a mansion in the, like, it's not that that doesn't take much to create that over there. It's crazy, man. It's just
it's like we're living in a sci-fi movie sometimes.
I remember as a kid, like seeing things like in sci-fi films, and I'm like, man, imagine that would happen like in real world. And now it's actually starting to happen. And it's like, and I just remembered those moments as like a 5-year-old seeing that stuff, like watching Star Wars or like watching, like, you know what I mean? It was just, it's amazing. It's if we use technology the way it, like in a pure way and in the way it's intended to help the world, I'm all for it, right? And it's you know, but sometimes we have to go through the mistakes that humans make usually, and we learn from them. Anyway, man, you guys heard it here. Follow Michael V Songs on TikTok and
Instagram.
TikTok and Instagram. And so, and his music is all over anywhere you take in your streaming music and YouTube. He's got music videos on there too, I noticed. So go check those out. You know where to find me. Fumble Podcast, of course. Subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss any content. And Pej the Maniac on all social media platforms: TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter. And it's on YouTube too, all of my comedy shorts.
Yeah, everyone go follow Pej the Maniac. It's not that hard. You just click the follow button.
Follow, baby. It's easy. Michael, I appreciate you getting on today. This has been the big episode 50 with future superstar and current superstar, Michael Vaughn. Thank you guys, and we'll catch you on 51.
But it kills me to think that you call me yours, when I know deep down you deserve much more. Oh, I'm so